Now, first of all, I would like to say that what the ICMA Centre is. This is part of Henley Business School, which is a triple accredited business school. That means that we are recognized, what we do in terms of teaching and research is recognized by three bodies or three institutions: AACSB, based in the United States. Then we have AMBA, based in the UK, and EQUIS, that is a European-wide accreditation body. So all these three basically confirm that we are top of the bracket, so to speak. So we are a top institution. There are only about 1% of business schools in the world that have triple accreditation, and we are one of them. So the ICMA Centre is the finance department of Henley Business School, and we teach both undergraduate and postgraduate students. And what we're going to focus today mostly is postgraduate master degrees, and specifically one that is related to Fintech, which is about the topic of the talk today. So riding the wave of the Fintech revolution. So there is a revolution taking place, and I'm sure all of you have noticed. I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, have a smartphone, and a lot of the action, for example, in terms of payment systems these days, take place on a smartphone. When you go and buy something, both online or in a shop, then you can use, very often you can use as a payment method some app that you have downloaded on your mobile phone. So that is one aspect of Fintech, but there are many others out there. So what I'm going to talk about briefly is just a description of the Fintech industry. No, this is going to be very high level, so that we all know, we are all on the same page, we know what we're talking about. And then I will start basically going into some more details about how to ride this wave of Fintech, of this revolution, and how to gain the knowledge that then you can use in order to become active in this very fast growing and fast moving market. So there, to start with, you see a definition. It's like all definitions, it's a little bit general. At least in this case, it is general. It says a lot, but at the same time, doesn't give you the full picture. So Fintech, of course, Fintech is, Fin stands for financial, tech is technology, so it's the combination of these two worlds. And how this combination can generate services that can be used by financial institutions, can be used by individuals like you and I when we make financial transactions, can be used by corporations. So the Fintech industry has the purpose of really facilitating financial transactions at every level. And it can do so by exploiting new technology, which is based on large quantity of data that is nowadays available and in various forms, and by using new data analytics that have been developed to process this data, to understand more about markets, about preferences of individuals, and finally to produce services that individuals, companies can use in order to do business or in order to carry on with our daily lives. So here you have some examples in this page. You can see it covers pretty much a lot of areas. Money transfers and payments is one of those areas, and as I mentioned, there are a lot of smartphone applications these days that enable you to make payments. If you are in China, for example, I'm sure you've heard of Alipay. We have other services provided by Apple, and many other providers. So there are also some cryptocurrencies that have come to the fore, and you might have heard the name Bitcoins. And so these are new currencies. They are different from the normal ones that we see and that we are used to use when we purchase something on a shop. So paper-based currency. These are electronic currencies, and they can be used for transactions, although some of them, like Bitcoin these days, are also used as storage of value, as investment vehicles. So definitely, so a big chunk of fintech has to do with payment systems, new payment systems that do not necessarily involve directly banks. Banks will be in the background, of course, but they're not necessarily the first players in this new network of payment systems. And talking about banks also, and talking about money, there are ways in which the fintech industry has affected the business of traditional banks. So for example, when you go to a bank, if you want to buy a property, you need to get a mortgage. In order to get a mortgage, of course, you need to make an application. So the question is, who processes that application? Now, in the past, it used to be human beings just checking your data and making sure that everything was in place so that you could get a loan to buy your property. Nowadays, that is more and more done automatically via algorithms that, or computer programs that can process the information that make a decision. Now, there are a lot of data protection implications involved in this, and the fact that decisions of this type should not be left to a computer. There should be human intervention. But that's something that is going to be dealt with separately. And it's going to be dealt with in the particular MSc program that I'm going to introduce to you in a minute, because data protection is really a big deal. And it's very much related to the whole fintech world, because that is based very much on personal information that we provide every day through our online activities, for example, online buying via Amazon or similar platforms, and via our use of the internet every day, for example, social media like Facebook, WeChat, or whatever other means you may be using to communicate with others, Instagram, Twitter. So all this information can be used by companies to design new products or to target individuals that may have specific needs or specific preferences in terms of products and services. Then saving and investments is the other point that I wanted to mention in there. And you see nowadays it is possible to for a corporation, for example, to raise money, whether it's equity financing or bond financing, via directly from investors. So they don't need to use necessarily the usual channels, which are financial markets or banks, but now corporations can link directly to investors, even retail investors like you and I, to raise money. And that is facilitated by a new fintech industry or new companies that are coming in and providing these very valuable services. There, I want to throw in another example. For example, robo-advisors. These are, again, software, computer software that basically processes information and can propose, for instance, portfolios or securities that may be suitable as an investment for an individual that is requesting this kind of service. In terms of insurance, also the insurance industry has been quite a bit affected by fintech, and nowadays insurance companies are providing more and more tailor-made insurance contracts. So contracts that are not more general, but they are specific to the situation and the circumstances of an individual, using data provided by the individual and using data the companies can collect about the individual from other sources. So what are the keywords that we hear a lot in the industry? There I put three. One is blockchain, and it's very much related to cryptocurrencies like Bitcoins, but not only restricted to the cryptocurrency world. Now, blockchain is a way to basically keep track of transactions and make sure that these transactions are recorded, and that if anyone needs to basically see what a particular good, for example, or a particular product, what kind of, how that has changed, or how that has been exchanged among different individuals and corporations over time, then a blockchain may be a way to record how this has taken place. Now, of course, a very useful application of blockchain is keeping track of transactions of currencies like Bitcoins, but it could also be about contracts. So if you want to have two parties agreeing on something, on a specific transaction, they of course need to exchange data, and this data can be enshrined or can be protected into a blockchain. So blockchain is much bigger than cryptocurrencies, and many believe that we will see more and more applications of this technology in the future. Now, big data is the other big thing. So we have much more data today than we have ever had, and a lot more is continually being generated every day. So the question is, how can we exploit commercially this data? And so this is what fintech enterprises are willing to and are aiming to address. So how to create business, how to create more valuable services, out of this fantastic amount of information that is available. And personally, I'm very interested in big data. The other day, I receive applications from students that want to do research. And of course, one of the areas of research, a very hot area of research, is related to climate change and also finance climate, or climate applied to the financial sector. So now, one of the things that are changing climate and or the way in which we think about climate and the way in which we can we can really address problems arising from climate change, is the information that is related to the planet that is collected from satellites, for example, or from other machines and other detectors that are spread around the globe about, for example, CO2 emissions. So all this information can also be called big data, and is now being used to find ways to inform governments and to inform individuals about how to tackle climate change issues, for example, rising temperatures, or very severe storms, or rainfall. So this is very exciting. So having big data available opens up an awful lot of opportunities for businesses, for research, and also for governments when they implement their policies, and also in the design of such policies. The third bullet point is artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. These are sometimes used as synonyms. They are slightly different. Now, artificial intelligence is the big umbrella, then machine learning is a subset of it, and deep learning is even a smaller subset. So this is about using ever faster computers to process information, to extract information from data. And also to make computers learn by themselves through the data that they can analyze. And this is specifically what we do with deep learning. One way in which computers can learn deeply is through neural networks. Now, these have been around for many decades, but they become very useful. They started becoming useful, and especially applications are being designed for neural networks and deep learning algorithms these days, thanks to the fast computers that we have. So these are the big three things that we see these days, basically changing and shaping the world of fintech. Players in the industry, we have everything. You know, across the spectrum, you have small corporations, startups, new companies that have an idea and they want to implement it, as well as large financial institutions or large corporations like big tech. You know, Alibaba, it's just one of those big names. But then in the Western world, you can think about Google, you can think about Facebook, you can think about Amazon. So across the spectrum, that means that there are employment opportunities across the spectrum. A lot of the students, very often, they just want to work for the big guys, but there are a lot of opportunities in the SME sector, small and medium enterprises, that are really going into fintech. And that can be a good idea to get involved with SMEs and to start creating a network with SMEs, something that we can help you with at the ICMA Centre and Hanley Business School, because they not only they have very often very exciting ideas they're working on, but also the growth potential for these firms is pretty big. And so if you happen to start working with one of those companies that will become the next Microsoft, then of course, the payoff is going to be fantastic. So I would recommend that you consider also smaller companies when you start thinking about your career in the fintech area. There are several subsectors. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. Prop tech is fintech applied to the real estate market. Reg tech, fintech applied to the regulation and compliance market that is pretty big, especially for financial institutions. InsurTech is technology applied to the insurance company. So this is the penetration of the fintech across several countries. You see China is there on top, 87%. And these percentages are a proportion of the digitally active population in those countries, meaning population or individuals that have access to the internet. So it's pretty high, but very high. The top ones are China and India. So this market is specifically a big thing in those two countries, but it's gonna become, or it's already a huge reality everywhere, and it's gonna become more and more important everywhere. So why study fintech at the ICMA Centre then? Well, we are one of the top ranked MSc Finance departments, and especially for pre-experienced finance programs in the world. So we are top 10 in the UK, top 50 in the world. A lot of our faculties have PhDs, and a lot of our faculties also have industry experience. So this is related to the last bullet point, where we say that basically what we try to achieve is the right blend between theory and practice. And we try to focus mostly or predominantly on practice. However, while keeping solid theoretical foundations in place and sharing those with our students, but really what we want is, or what we want students to really get is a sense of the business implications of what's happening and the sense of what's happening out there in the industry. And that also, I think, is related to the very high satisfaction rate that we get with our students, which is one of the highest in the country. Now, as you will see later when I show you the structure of the degree, a lot of the modules are being designed specifically for our FinTech degree. So there are a few modules that are in common with other master's programs in finance, but a lot of the stuff is just designed specifically, it's bespoke for FinTech students. We have a dedicated career, and this is great because you have smaller groups, you can get to know each other, and you start networking with these individuals, and then we become friends for life, hopefully. So I think it's a great environment that we can provide teaching-wise, and learning-wise. So we have a dedicated careers team, so you can meet our career advisors. They have an office right in our building, so you can go there and get support for all the various activities that we do, or that you will need to do in order to find a job, in order to find a work placement, for example, which I'll talk about later on. So we also provide networking opportunities by our industry insights workshops that take place every week, or almost every week, during the autumn term and the spring terms. And we have a very vast network of alumni, of about 75,000 individuals in 150 countries. These are former students of the ICMA Centre and Henley Business School that can be reached to get inside information about what corporations are looking for, and also tips about job openings. Now, the facility, we have our own buildings, we have trading rooms where we do trading simulations that students enjoy very much and are a great learning experience. And in fact, we have one of the largest trading simulation environments outside investment banks. So this is we have about 100 computers linked together that can be used for trading purposes, for you to learn how to trade, for example, how to manage portfolio risk. Now, the location is quite good, I would say. I would say it's very good, in fact, because we are just a train ride away from London. It's about 25 minutes away. And London is really the center of the FinTech world in the UK, and also internationally is a real hub where a lot of FinTech companies have their own headquarters. So it's very handy to be so close to London. And at the same time, I would say it's also very nice not to be right in the middle of London, because we have a fantastic campus where you can stay and enjoy campus life and the green and our gardens. But at the same time, if you want the action, you'll be straight in central London in no time. So employability destinations, I've already covered this. I'll leave you the slides for you to read later, but there are plenty of options out there. And you don't need to be a data scientist. This is the point I wanted to make. You don't need to be a data scientist in order to have the opportunity to work in the FinTech industry. In the FinTech industry, they look a lot for professionals that are tech comfortable, meaning that they have an understanding of technology, but they're not necessarily engineers. They're not necessarily computer engineers or software engineers. So what we try to build with our degree are professionals that have both the skills and the understanding of a programmer and a finance expert, of course, at a different level. So we try to combine elements of computer science and finance, so that our students from this degree will have an understanding of how technology and finance really can get together and be exploited for business purposes. So this is the structure of our MSc Finance and Financial Technology. degree. So you will see all the ones that are in red, the bullet points in red, and the one with the new next to it are modules or courses that are specific to the fintech degree, and all of these are compulsory. So all the students in that degree will need to do it. And you see from the names they are very much informed by the fintech revolution that I was talking about. So digital banking and payment systems. Then there will be a module on Python, which is one of the most popular programming languages in the fintech industry. So you don't need to have programming experience. So we start from zero, we start from scratch. We will give you, if you decide to apply, we'll give you something to do over the summer before you join, so that you can start thinking as a programmer does. But you don't have to have that kind of background. So you don't need to worry about that point. But definitely having some programming and developing programming skills would be very important, because then in the spring term, a lot of the modules will be based on what you've learned in the autumn term about Python. And it's also good to develop this familiarity, because in the industry, this is something that people would want, employers would want to see in a new hire, in a new employee. Then we have machine learning and big data. We already talked about this: blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and then the application of big data on insurance companies, and then the fintech regulation and data protection that I mentioned briefly before. There's also a certification associated with this degree. Basically, this is KNIME is a software that's becoming more and more popular to handle big data. And so we train our students to use this specific software, and it can be paired with Python, by the way. Also in the end of this training, they will receive a level 1 certification. They can also go for the level 2 certification, but up to level 1 will be covered by the degree and by the university. So at no additional cost. As I said, there are work placement opportunities. These normally take place in the summer. We're talking about minimum of 150 hours, a maximum of 3 months. And these are wonderful opportunities for gaining work experience and develop employability skills that are very much sought after by employers. So we don't guarantee the placement, in the sense that students will need to find the companies themselves, but we provide support. So we provide a network of companies that you can start contacting, both large companies as well as SMEs. And we train you so that you can be successful in interviews for a work placement or for an internship during the summer. And then there will be a project associated with this internship at the end. So a lot of our students undertake work placements, and this is not only in the UK, it can be around the world. So we have students that went to Germany, China, Greece, for example. And even if you are on a tier 4 visa, as most of students from Asian countries will be, then you can also do a work placement. So you don't need to worry about that dimension. So this is a summary of what I just talked about, and specifically in relation to the fintech degree. The entry qualification is a 2-1. That is equivalent to a B grade or a 3 out of 4 GPA. Now, if you normally there is also some differentiation among universities. For example, in China, we divide universities between top tier that belong to the 985 project and 211 project, and then second tier. And so there may be some difference in there in terms of entry requirements. And at the end of these slides, you will see an address to our admissions team that you can use to get in touch with us and ask for the specific details. So the fee is indicated there, and there are also scholarships and up to 5 for this specific degree, but there are more scholarships available to specific countries. And so if you click on the link that is active, if you go over scholarship, then you will see all the scholarships that we can offer. I'm aware that I'm running a little bit over time, so I will take just 1 or 2 minutes to wrap up, and then we can open to questions. So there are other master's programs at the center, as I mentioned, and in here you see other 9. At the top, you have the master programs that we use for the FT ranking. So these are our flagship programs. And in brackets, you see also the accreditations. So in here, you have some of the accreditations that our programs have, and this is basically a recognition from the industry of the fact that our teaching is connected to what happens in the real world out there. And just a couple of points about the MSc Finance that I wanted to share. So this is, as I said, one of the 2 that will be in the FT ranking, the Financial Times ranking. And so this is very attractive programs. And there are three points that I wanted to share with you. One is that in order to allow our students to have an international experience, there will be a module taught in Athens. So you will go to Greece for some time to learn, and specifically about Fintech. So this is not related to the Fintech degree, but there will be a module that is on Fintech also for the MSc Finance students, and that will be taught abroad. And then there's also going to be a masterclass and this is how to value a company, how to determine the value of a company. And we bring in professionals from the industry to run this masterclass. And also we have 2 or 3 scholarships for students to join one of the top universities in China for their summer program that normally takes place at the end of June, beginning of July. So this is a Tsinghua University Financial Leaders Summer Program. And this is, something very valuable, not only if you are Chinese, but in general. So this program is really exciting, and it would enable you to connect with local businesses and to understand how things work in this fantastic Chinese market. It's growing very fast and producing a lot of exciting innovations. So there are, as I said, scholarships that are also specific to the MSc Finance, and if you have work experience, there are scholarships, larger scholarships that you can tap into. So for more information, you can call us, or you can send an email to our admission team. You can have also my email address, which is on the first slide that I showed, so you can contact me directly if you have questions. Don't be afraid. And so thank you. So I will close it here and open to questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Simone. So yeah, what we're going to do is we'll go through the Q&A box now. So I did notice some of you were putting questions in the chat. If you want them answered, please copy them over to the Q&A box so I can make sure that we get through all of them. Now, the first question came up was just regarding your slides. Somebody was asking, what do you mean by P2P?
Oh, it's a peer-to-peer. So P2P lending, for example, it can be used in many different contexts, but peer-to-peer lending is lending that takes place without the intermediation of banks. Normally, if you want money as a corporation or as an individual, for whatever reason, then you go to a bank and you apply for a loan. Nowadays, the fintech industry is disrupting that way of raising finance or raising money. And so there are companies that now put the investors directly in touch with the borrowers, so without intermediation of a bank. So if I have some savings and I want to lend money to a corporation via peer-to-peer transaction, I can lend directly. While before, what I had to do was to go to a bank and maybe talk to a financial advisor, and he will say, well, okay, this is what you can do with your money, and invest here and invest there. So that's a new way of doing things. That doesn't mean that banks are now out of business, but they're definitely challenged by this new peer-to-peer type of business model.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is regarding, related to the coronavirus. Are you currently still hosting lessons at the moment online?
Okay, so all universities in the UK at the moment have gone totally online. So that means that face-to-face teaching is not happening for the summer term. And but we hope to, and all the teaching for the summer term is going to be recorded and made available to our students online. Now, what's going to happen in September, we hope that we will be back to normal. But if that is not the case, then there will be an option for students to follow our degrees online. So, and we will be in touch as soon as we will know more. But the online option from now on most likely is going to be open. So we're going to have face-to-face and online for those that cannot join us in person.
Great, thank you. The next question's a tricky one as well. They've said, you mentioned 80% of fintech companies are in London. What is Brexit going to mean for that?
Oh wow, that's an interesting one. So we haven't seen, well, we have signs that companies are establishing a presence. Even UK companies are establishing a presence in Europe, mainland Europe, but they are not leaving London. So London still remains one of the top, if not the top, financial centers around the world, and that is unlikely to change because the environment is very, it's very well established, and there are a lot of services around the financial sector that are there physically. So I'm not saying that in the future things might not change, but at the moment, the tendency seems for companies to remain remain in the UK and remain in London and do business in London. Maybe they will have businesses also in Europe, so they will have branches elsewhere. But I don't think that there is a very large migration without leaving a presence in London. This applies also to the fintech industry. But things are really evolving very fast, especially in that segment, in the fintech market, because you can be pretty much everywhere to do that kind of business. However, the infrastructure is also important, and also the financial infrastructure is important. So London, I'm sure that it will still be alive and kicking, very much dominant in its position for quite some time.
Great. I'm going to link the next two questions together. So people are asking for a little bit more detail on entry requirements. So you mentioned a 2-1 degree, but does it need to be from a particular academic background? And also, can you clarify a little bit more about what you meant when you said quantitative skills?
Okay, so so we want a 2-1 degree is not necessarily from any specific background. So our degrees are not designed for engineers or for computer scientists, and I think I mentioned this in my talk. So you can have any background, provided that you have a passion and an interest for the topic that you choose for fintech in this space, if you are applying for the fintech degree. And you have some elements, you have done at the undergraduate level some maths and stats. So we want evidence of numeracy, ability with numbers, ability with statistical tools. Now, how much of that? Well, typically 2 or 3 modules are okay, and with a B average in those modules, that will be enough for you to qualify. But don't be put off if you have less than that. I would recommend that you apply anyway. And then if we think that you don't have enough maths, or your quantitative background has a little bit of a question mark, then we would ask you to do, for example, a GMAT test. just for you to, so that we are confident that you'll be able to cope with the quantitative elements in our degrees. Now, another thing that I would like to mention is that not all our degrees have the quants requirements. So if you are from a background, if you haven't done any maths or stats in your undergraduate degree, you may want to consider other programs like the Capital Markets Compliance Regulation program or the International Shipping and Finance programs that don't have that requirement.
Okay, great. Somebody's asking you, can you tell them what the KNIME stands for? Is that an abbreviation?
It's the name. It's the name of KNIME. It's the name of this software. If you Google KNIME, or if you just click on the link that I put on that page, you will go and it will explain to you what it is about. I don't know whether it's an acronym, to be frank. Yeah, I'm not sure. And going back to the previous question, sorry, I forgot to mention something. The one clarification about what a 2-1 is. Again, don't worry about it. It's quite complex because it varies from country to country. So I cannot give you a generic answer. It's much better to send an email to our admission officers. They will get back to you with your qualifications, and they will get back to you and say, well, yes, this is okay, or no, that's not good enough.
Okay. Next question. What's the difference between a 9-month and a 12-month course?
The 9-month course doesn't have a summer term. Well, we have a shorter summer term. So you finish in July, you graduate. So you join in September, in July you graduate. You finish all your exams in May, beginning of June. With a 12-month programs, you also have one module, meaning one course in the summer, and that could be the work placement. So basically the 9-month program is slightly more compressed, and that is sometimes valuable for individuals that already have a job. They need to go back to the job. They need to do things a little bit more quickly than others, but you miss on some opportunities. For example, the work placement opportunity if you do a 9-month program. So they're there to really meet different needs.
Okay, great. How would they apply for the Tsinghua University program if that was what they were interested in doing?
So the application process begins in January. So there is an application that needs to be sent to Tsinghua, and an application needs to be sent to us, different dates. But we do the selection. So we select the students, and then we send the candidates to Tsinghua. But the application needs to go also to Tsinghua so that they have your personal data, and they can get in touch if they need to. Okay.
Do all MSc students studying at Henley Business School have the chance for a work placement, or is that specific to the ICMA Centre?
The work placement is, well, we have a lot of programs. So I would say that for the vast majority of the programs, the work placement is available. So yes, in general, but there could be some exceptions that I'm not aware of. So I don't want, but yeah, it's something that we value very much. So it's normally embedded. But I would recommend that if you have a question about non-ICMA Centre program, you contact the admission team or the program directors that should be available online. If you have questions regarding that, you can contact admissions, then they will tell you who to speak to get specific information.
Okay. Are the modules mainly about theories? Are there any practical elements to the modules? I think this is referring to the Fintech course specifically.
Yeah. The ICMA Centre prides itself for its for being practice-oriented. So we have a lot of our teaching staff are from the industry, and they teach industry relevant material. All of our material is industry relevant, but in their specific case, they just, this very much applies. So it's very, very practical. To give you an example regarding the Fintech degree, the machine learning module is taught by a banker that is currently employed by Citibank in Singapore. And so he comes down, he flies, he flies from Singapore, he teaches a block, and then he flies back, and then he flies. And so it goes back and forth. And a lot of the stuff that he does it's related to his job, and he designs Python programs that students need to work on or develop in order to apply the stuff that he teaches. So he's very much hands-on. There is the insurance module is taught by another practitioner from Canada Life, which is a major life insurer in the UK. And that, again, is about stuff that he does in his job. So, insurance policies and pricing these policies and collecting and manipulating insurance data, that is part of his daily routine. So this is what we do. This is very much applied. But at the same time, we need to provide the theoretical foundations. So those are also there, and they have to be there. Typically what happens is that we have a split. Normally we have a lot of or more theory at the start, and then once the foundations are there, we start building in the practical elements in the second part of the degree. But from the very start, for example, you will be exposed to trading simulations. So historically, we've been pioneers in this area. And so we want our students to really understand how financial markets work, which is also related to fintech, because it's part of the whole package. And that all our fintech trading simulation parts are taught by traders, so people that were in the industry or are still in the industry and do trading. So it's very much applied.
Okay. Next question. How many students actually manage to find work placements? I think the context behind that is what happens if you don't find yourself a work placement.
Okay, so if you don't let me answer the second bit. If you don't find a work placement, then there are other modules that you can do in the summer. So we have a selection of 4 modules at the moment. And you can find the details again if you follow the links in my presentation. You will see what's available in the summer. There is a proportion that is not large this year specifically. Well, everybody faces difficulties, so I think the percentage of students that will be able to land a work placement is going to be limited, also because companies are closed. But in the past, we had, it really varies from degree. So I wouldn't like to give you a percentage because it varies from degree to degree. One of the most successful one, for example, was the shipping degree, where we had probably 50% or more of the students that landed a work placement. Other degrees have a lower proportion. But, it really depends on how students get to think in terms of getting a work placement from the very beginning. We try to instill that point from the start that you need to think about your career from day one. And unfortunately, we find that a lot of students leave it until it is too late, until they've done all the exams and say, okay, now it's summer, now I want a work placement. It's not going to happen that way. So if you put in the work, then you stand much higher chances to find a work placement. And we can support you because we have career advisors. They are there specifically for that purpose.
Okay, great, thank you. Somebody, a student's message saying they're interested in derivative trading. Is the Fintech program the right one for them?
No, I think that if you want to do derivative trading, you're probably better off with either the MSc Finance or the MSc Investment Management.
Okay.
There will be an element of trading for the Fintech degree done in part 1. But if you want to specialize on trading, I would recommend MSc Finance or MSc Investment Management. That's what they are designed for.
Okay. Is the Fintech course available for distance learning, so completely online?
That's a very good question. At the moment, we used to have distance learning, and then we discontinued that. I don't know in September what's going to happen in terms of distance learning, because as I mentioned before, we are moving in the direction of having an online version of our lectures and assessments as well. So it's really a question mark at the moment. So we'll need to see. As of today, we don't have a distance learning option. Whether it become available in the summer, I don't know. So please watch this space.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any statistics around percentage of students coming out of the course that manage to find jobs in the UK? That's quite a specific question.
Well, no, we need to talk to my careers.
That's fine.
There are four, but what I can tell you is that for the Financial Times rankings, one of the criteria is employability, how our students do after 3 months that they have completed their degree. And so we need to rank pretty high in order to get points on that particular criterion and to get higher in our ranking. So we have a good proportion of students employed after 3 months. Don't ask me the specific numbers, but it's a good proportion. Regarding whether that's based in the UK, I wouldn't be able to say, but I would say that a lot of our students are international, and a lot of our students tend to go back to their countries when they finish their degree. Now, things might change in future because now we have a more relaxed visa requirements. So students that finish an MSc program can remain in the country for longer than it used to be. If they want to have a work experience, then they can stay. And so I think it's now up to 2 years, don't quote me, but I think that's what's happening at the moment. So the opportunities are opening up for highly qualified individuals to find jobs in the UK after they finish their degree.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody's asking, the Tsinghua summer program, if you're studying corporate finance, is that also available to you?
No, that's only open to the MSc Finance students.
Okay. Somebody's asking, after they have completed the programming courses, how are their programming skills going to be? Are they going to be employable?
After you finish the programming course, you will program like, you know, well, you will have some understanding of programming. You will know how to build programs in Python. You will not be a computer scientist. You know, let's be clear about this. So after one module, you won't be at the same level as a professional. But what we do, we build Python material and Python applications in the modules that we do in the second term. After the Python module is taught in the first term in the autumn, but in the spring term, machine learning and other modules will, and for example, blockchain and cryptocurrencies, they have Python applications. So you'll be able to reinforce your knowledge that you have acquired about Python. And by the time you finish, then you will be, I think you will have a pretty good understanding of what Python can do. But programming, and that comes from somebody that's been a programmer for many, many years. Programming is something that you build over time and through practice. So I would say that we will provide the foundations for you then to build on if you're really interested. And I would say that you know, you can have a good starting point even if you join a company and you are asked to program. You know, you will have the basics in there that will enable you to learn quickly and to become active, to become really useful for the company from the start.
Okay. We're running out of time, but I think we've got time for one more question.
Sure.
And then if anybody wants to ask any other questions, I suppose it's okay for them to email you directly?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll finish with people are asking whether or not the fees are the same for if you're studying the 9 months or 12 months.
Yeah, they're exactly the same because the modules are exactly the same. You need to complete 180 credits to get a master's degree. So you have 180 credits in both cases. So it's not that one is less than the other. They are both master degrees. So the fees are the same.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
However, you're gonna have you have some savings if you do the 9-month programs because you won't need to spend for accommodation and living expenses over the summer.
Okay, so I'm sorry if we didn't manage to get round to your question. There were still a couple of questions left unanswered. But what we can do is, if you want to send an email, would you be able to put your email address back up on the slides just so they can see?
Oh yes.
There you go. So if you want to send an email to this email address here with any questions that you had that we weren't able to answer within the hour, then please do so. I've also, in the chat box, I've put a link to our website where you can contact us if you're interested in making an application and you'd like some guidance from us about doing so. But otherwise, thank you very much for attending today, and I hope you all have a lovely evening. Okay?
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.